On Wednesday night, Stanley Johnson had his best night as a Toronto Raptor against the Philadelphia 76ers, albeit it was in garbage time against Philly's bench players. But can Stanley Johnson make this a consistent thing for the Toronto Raptors? Let's get into it. Welcome to Amateur Sports, everybody. Jacob Perzonia here, talking about Stanley Johnson, the former lottery pick. I think a lot of people seem to forget. Stanley Johnson was a very high lottery pick. He was selected 8th overall by the Detroit Pistons in the 2015 NBA entry draft, and he never quite found his footing in the NBA. He came out of Arizona as a slasher, and I find that there are quite a bit of slashers who don't really transition their game from the college level to the NBA because NBA defenses are so much better. You can't get your space at the hoop as easily. Maybe that's it. I'm sure there's some slashers who really find their footing in the NBA and do well in the big league, but Stanley Johnson is not one of them. And the Raptors, took a gamble, signed him to a small contract, just over $3 million for this season. He's been a garbage time player. That's about it. But can Stanley Johnson ever find himself taking on a bigger role for the Toronto Raptors and be a bit of an X factor for them? And we don't need to jump on that one game-winning shot against Philly like, it's the savior of Stanley Johnson's career. I don't think that's the case, but surely confidence is a thing that Stanley Johnson needs right now. After having a lot of seasons where he struggled, not getting really any minutes for the Toronto Raptors this season, confidence is what Stanley Johnson needs. And there's always that lingering thing that he had that 8th overall pick potential. That's always going to be lingering there. Can he ever find that potential? I don't think there's any better team in the NBA that can unlock that potential than the Toronto Raptors because of the way they can develop players. Like, take a look at Pascal Siakam and all of our other late picks and undrafted guys in the team like Fred VanVleet. Can we unlock this potential for Stanley Johnson? Well, here's the thing about Stanley Johnson's game. We can't get a good sense of it from the NBA because he barely gets any minutes. And if he does, they are garbage time minutes. And I've roasted Stanley Johnson on this channel a lot of times. I'm not a big fan of Stanley Johnson, but can he somehow unlock that potential? Let's look at the way he plays in the GLeague. He's a guy who gets going the more he starts shooting. So when he gets some meaningful minutes against Philly and he keeps getting opportunities, that's when he can strike. It seems like he got the last play call from Adrian Griffin in that game against the Philadelphia 76ers. Quick shout out to Adrian Griffin, head coaching debut in the NBA, and the bench mob gets it done with a huge comeback in the last couple of minutes. Stanley Johnson got the call for the last shot, it seems like, because Matt Thomas was wide open in basically the corner, and Stanley Johnson did not find him. I was yelling at my TV, but Stanley Johnson got the miss, bounced around, and put it back up and got the game winner. Stanley Johnson is a guy who relies on taking a lot of shots. As he gets more comfortable and invested in the game, that's where he can be better. That's what you kind of see when he's playing for the Raptors 905. But in the NBA, he doesn't get those opportunities. And obviously, you see in practice if he's good enough to play in the NBA, and it's obvious that he is deemed not. And when you watch him play in garbage time in the NBA, you see that he is not ready to play at that level. So as far as being an X factor, I don't think it's going to happen in the playoffs this year. I just think there's too many guys ahead of him in the lineup. I think that maybe next year, if the Raptors start to lose some players and we need to find a guy off the bench who can contribute a bit more, maybe get 8 to 10 minutes a game, maybe Stanley Johnson can be that guy. Maybe the Raptors can work with him over the offseason. If we lose some guys and we need next man up attitude from guys like Stanley Johnson, maybe he can settle into a small role on the team and be a bit of that X factor off the bench. Something different. I just don't think he really offers what the Raptors need from a perimeter player, a guy who can shoot threes, who can still drive and hit his layup. Stanley Johnson's a guy who's not really a threat from the outside, but maybe he can be a difference maker, because if he gets this confidence boost, playing in situations like in the Philly game, if he can take that confidence and ride with it into the offseason, or maybe even if he gets a couple little opportunities in the playoffs, if he can ride that confidence into the offseason, make himself a better player, maybe he can be a contributor off the bench for the next season for the Toronto Raptors. If, we start to lose guys, like maybe, my nightmare situation if Fred VanVleet does not re-sign, if we end up trading guys like maybe Norman Powell, that is a nightmare situation. But if that happens, Can Stanley Johnson come in, fill that void? I mean, Terrence Davis is already there to fill that in. Stanley Johnson could be maybe a bench piece, but he's got a lot of work to do. I think that confidence is the biggest thing for Stanley Johnson right now, and he got a humongous confidence boost on Wednesday night against the Philadelphia 76ers. If we're talking about an X factor for the playoff season, there is no other man I'm thinking of than Matt the Iceman Thomas. Mr. 99 Matt Thomas. He is another one who is a huge confidence player. I mean, a lot of shooters are confidence players. You get in your flow, you get in your rhythm by taking a lot of repetitions in game. And because the Raptors have clinched a 2 seed, Matt Thomas has been balling in his opportunities. I mean, against the Bucks, the guy was lights out, and he had another good showing against Philly. If he can continue and take this confidence into the playoffs, I think in limited minutes, Matt Thomas is a big-time X factor in a game. He can shift the dynamic of a game very quickly. Maybe in 2 possessions, he hits 2 threes, and all of a sudden it's a 6-point turnaround for the Toronto Raptors. You can rely on this guy to get his shots. There has been situations where he comes into a game cold, hasn't had a lot of minutes in a long time, and that's where he can't really get his shots going down. But right now, it seems like he's hitting everything. And he had a big shot against Philly on Wednesday night as well. If he continues this, maybe he gets some minutes against Denver today. If he can continue in this vein and get some small playoff minutes, maybe 8 to 10 minutes a game, he can be a huge factor for the Raptors just to get that big shot, to swing momentum, coming out of a timeout, maybe bring on Matt Thomas, get a play for him to get his shot, let him hit the 3, and all of a sudden the dynamic can change. Maybe he stays on and hits another one. And a big thing I've noticed in the NBA bubble is that Matt Thomas is starting to look a lot better on defense. Because that was a thing in the regular season that the Raptors were really struggling with, because, it seemed like when Matt Thomas was on the court, they had to run a lot of box ones because, well, Matt Thomas can't really be trusted to guard his guy. So he had to go with a more zonal approach to make sure that he's not a liability on defense. He has looked a lot better on defense. That's a huge thing because it can give him more minutes on the court because you can trust him a bit more on defense. Therefore, his offense, because it's so good, you can leave him on the court a bit longer. And Matt Thomas has decent handles, but the spot-up shooting can be such a difference maker for the Raptors come playoff time. And we have him for next season. I hope that Matt Thomas can grow even further, become just that little bit more confident from 3, and knock down a few more shots. This season, he has really been lights out. This guy is shooting 47% from 3. That is near the top of the NBA. He is a phenomenal shooter, and I think that a lot of guys kind of neglect him in the big moments because you're focused on the really more talented players. No disrespect to Matt Thomas. You're focused on the big names on the Raptors. But if Matt Thomas, if you neglect him, you leave him open and we get a good kick out, he's going to hit that 3. He's going to hit that 3, seems like half the time. And if he's wide open, I'll give him way more than half the time. I can trust Matt Thomas to hit that big shot. And for that reason, Matt Thomas is your X factor for the playoffs. But for next season, Stanley Johnson just continue to build up his confidence. I like what I saw from the Raptors bench. I really love the Raptors bench and the Philly bench, going at each other in a very nice way, in a very game-friendly way, just hyping up the bench guys that were on the floor. And I love the way that when Stanley Johnson hits that big shot to win the game, the Raptors bench going crazy, hyping him up, giving him the confidence boost he needs to take into the offseason to make himself a better player and get closer to that 8th overall pick potential, because I don't think he's ever going to find it, but can he be a serviceable player in the NBA? Maybe he can. He's entering a contract year, and if he doesn't show out this season, he may not get another NBA contract. So he's got to show not just the Raptors, but the NBA what he can do next season, because that's the year that's going to define his next contract. I hope the best for him. I've made fun of him a lot on this channel. I don't know if we're really going to see it, but I think it's possible that Stanley Johnson could be an X factor based on what we saw against Philly. But if you want an X factor for the playoffs, Matt Thomas is your guy. Niagara Falls Thomas, the Iceman, Mr. 99. He's got these nicknames for a reason. He is a lethal lethal perimeter shooter. What do you guys think about Stanley Johnson's prospects as an X factor, or Matt Thomas's prospect as an X factor? Do you agree on my take on Matt Thomas? Do you disagree? Who is the key X factor for the Raptors come playoff time and next season? Let me know in the comments down below. But thank you so much for watching. Please like the video if you liked, and subscribe to Amateur Sports for more content just like this as well. Hit the notification bell because we post 4 times a week on the channel: Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and Saturday, except not this Saturday, not tomorrow. I will be away, but we'll be back Monday as the Raptors start their quest for another NBA championship against the Brooklyn Nets. Join Amateur Sports along the way for that journey. Lots of content coming up as the Raptors head into the playoffs. Make sure you are subscribed to the channel. But at the end of the day, I believe what I say, and if you disagree, that is okay. We will see you again Monday.